Martine Archer, Fiona Wilton, Katie Dennis, Melinda Hoare, Christy Baxter, Jackie Wingrove, Joanne Henley and Louise Mansfield were ably led by captain-coach Rachel Long to snare the cup that has taken 67 years to win. Newcastle beat the Uni of New South Wales 46-35 in the semi-final and turned around a sectional defeat by Monash of Melbourne to win the grand final 37-30 in a great performance. For the 9 team members, they had the right preparation for the Australian title.
We attended the conference games in Wagga about 2 months ago and we came home undefeated, so we're quite confident that we could do very well. The girls all combined very well as a team and it was a great team effort, and I think everyone celebrated quite well at the end of the trip.
As an added bonus, Martine Archer and Fiona Wilton were named in the All-Australian Merit Team.
Martine and Fiona were both named in the Australian squad, which is quite an honour. Unfortunately it doesn't go anywhere, but still it's a bit of an honour to have your name next to an Australian team.
Their 4th win on the trot, and the Knights find themselves in 2nd position on the Winfield Cup ladder. Clearly the better side for the majority of the match against the Bears, Newcastle sounded a warning for all to heed, that they are finals contenders. But despite the euphoria of the victory, no one is getting too carried away just yet.
Oh, it's early days, Michael. There are 7 rounds. There are plenty of cliches to be used, but we're just taking one week at a time.
Tremendous feeling in the club at the moment.
There is. Much of that credit has got to go, of course, to David Waite and his coaching staff. It's also a year since he took over, so what a terrific year he has had.
Underlining the success of the club is the tremendous effort by the lower grades. The reserves beat the previously undefeated Bears to be outright second by 3 points on the ladder, and the President's Cup players are in the hunt for the semis, only 1 point outside the top 5.
We've shown great improvement in both lower grade sides this year. We're applying plenty of pressure to the first grade side, which I'm sure David wants, and leading the club championship, it shows the strength and the depth of the club.
For Robert Finch's boys, it was a gutsy performance on Saturday, coming from behind to grab the win. But again, there is no room for complacency.
Last year, the side was in the same position and failed to make the semis, so we've still got a fair way to go, and we've got to keep our mind on the job.
The only item on Brian Howe's rush visit to Newcastle was talks with the council alderman about the project that's seen as crucial to the city's future, the redevelopment of Honeysuckle. But a campaigner from the Save Our Rail group did his best to persuade the Deputy PM to take its issue into the meeting as well. After meeting behind closed doors for an hour, Mr Howe re-emerged with Lord Mayor John McNaughton to say what was achieved. Although Honeysuckle has been stuck on the drawing board for almost a year since the federal government announced a Building Better Cities grant, Mr Howe says the project is still in line for the money. The question is, how much?
How much money? The total 5-year figure, about what's now 4-year figure, is about, I think, 70 million in all.
71.
Alderman McNaughton, who returned from a Queensland holiday for the meeting, seemed pleased with the outcome. Not so pleased is David Lamarchant from the Honeysuckle Development Corporation, who wasn't invited to the meeting.
I think those negotiations could be completed within a few days, if not a week or two. But the new Premier, I think, is anxious to have another look at some of these things.
While trains trundled off nearby to parts unknown, a new centre to make travel dreams come true was unveiled trackside at Broadmeadow. The Parliamentary Secretary for Transport, Don Page, joined CountryLink management and a horde of travellers for the official opening of the travel centre. CountryLink General Manager Tom Gable says what can be offered to the customer now is a long way down the line from what the service used to be.
Basically, before we had a booking office which only gave a partial service, what this travel centre now does is book your rail travel as well as any other sort of travel you may wish to embark on.
In recent months, changes to train timetables have made links with the country seem shaky to those who rely on rail. But Don Page denies the travel centre is a payback for commuting hardships endured in the country.
It's difficult to get a timetable that suits everybody. But no, this is really not so much a question of trying to offset any timetable difficulties. This is really part of the strategy of the CountryLink organisation and State Rail generally, which is that you need to be competitive.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The government has allocated the money, TAFE the facilities and teachers, but the trouble is getting the students.
And you advertise courses. We've done this twice, 2 sets of advertising for courses, and still we end up with half a dozen people where we have 60 or 70 vacancies in courses.
5 18-week courses are ready, ranging from metal fabrication and welding to electrical work. The programs offer accreditation towards full-time trade studies and also retraining. Latest figures show almost 44,000 people are unemployed in the Hunter. So why have so few applied for another start? According to the students on campus, the feeling is one simply of lethargy and depression. Why take on a course when there are no guarantees of a job?
Maybe they don't want it, might be too degrading to come and try for one if they think they're going to be let down at the end of it.
Australia now, we're going to have the best trained unemployed in the world, really, aren't we?
Newcastle TAFE says the course will give students a leg into industry. They can stay on dole payments while studying and will also have some additional government funding for expenses. And more new courses for the TAFE with the delivery of 12 personal computers. With changing technologies, there is increasing need for updated courses in computer management. Peter Iron, NBN News. It's been 8 months between races at Cessnock while a $1.5 million pavilion was built on the course. And today, racegoers made up for lost time with the 12th running of the notorious Jungle Juice Cup.
There's no question that since the meeting started in 1981, it really has matured, to pardon the pun.
Punters passed out their cash, others just passed out.
The jungle juice is flowing freely. I believe they ran out of beer early in the day, went through 60 or 70 kegs, had to send for more. They've sold out of race books. You know, anyone who's not here today, like, they're crazy. Like, if you had a job, you'd have a sickie, wouldn't you?
But you didn't have to be on the sponsor's product to be in good spirits. Some of the 6,000 plus crowd actually came to see the racing. Gary Harley's money was on this horse Pre-Record, formerly owned by Robert Sangster, and already holding a cool $250,000 plus in prize money. Pre-Record took the money from Commendation and Cool Jimmy. The overall winners, the new look Cessnock racecourse and some exhausted punters. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
In the last 12 months, more than 41,000 cars were stolen statewide. Less than 10% of those were from the Newcastle area. Of the 5 regions NRMA covers, Newcastle ranked the lowest, with about 4 stolen car claims per 1,000 insurance policies. Country New South Wales rated second lowest, with Sydney by far the highest. NRMA General Manager Richard Cox says risk of theft and the location of where a policy is held are major factors influencing an insurance agreement. So lower car theft rates equals cheaper premiums. Mr Cox believes there are a number of reasons for Newcastle's low theft rate.
The prime one has been a very strong focus by the police on these activities, and I think the police have done an absolutely wonderful job up here.
He's also praised the public transport system.
Particularly young people can get home at night. We've found in Sydney there's a lot of joyriding taken by young people stranded in the city trying to get out to the outer suburbs late at night.
While in Newcastle, Mr Cox launched a protection scheme for used car buyers. Attempting to improve the reputation of used car dealers, NRMA has developed an authorised car dealer program. Based on a scheme from the United Kingdom, every car in a yard will be checked by an NRMA assessor.
There's an agreement between the NRMA and the dealer that the essential repairs listed on that report will be remedied before the car is put on the yard for sale.
And if this isn't done, NRMA will step in.
The NRMA will arbitrate and the dealer will have to accept the NRMA's ruling on the arbitration.
This could involve the dealer doing the repairs or covering the cost of having them done elsewhere. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Business in Grafton traditionally shuts down for 2 days in July every year. Today was one of them. 1 p.m. saw the betting ring full with thousands of dollars changing hands. The bookies adjusted the totes while the crowd settled in for a big afternoon of racing. Racing technology made an appearance in Grafton with the big screen ensuring no one would miss out on other race carnivals around the country. Hats were the order of the day in the fashion stakes, with one dapper dresser going to town. As the big one drew nearer, the horses were shown off, giving spectators their last view of the specimen they had laid their money on. Others positioned themselves for a bird's eye view, and they were off and racing. In what many have suggested to be an upset, it was Lucky Dapper first over the line, followed by Mark Time and Jackson River. The Quinella paid a tidy $214.80 and the trifecta a whopping $6,940.70.
The Great North Walk incorporates some of the state's most spectacular coastal and bushland scenery in an unbroken trail from Sydney Cove to Newcastle in the Hunter Valley. The Department of Conservation and Land Management project has now received a State Tourism Award for excellence in the environmental category. Regional Director Ian Melville says the award offers new opportunities for the tourism industry.
The challenge now is where we go in terms of maintaining it, and that really is a large cost. So there are a couple of possibilities there. One being commercial involvement, and one of the ideas we have is to actually put cabin accommodation in at, say, one of the trackheads.
It's envisaged that private operators or community groups would tender for the responsibility of maintaining parts of the Great North Walk. Mr Melville says the concept is still in the early stages. A detailed kit outlining the walk section by section has been prepared for bushwalkers and day hikers, but Mr Melville believes the Great North Walk must become even more accessible to a growing army of eco-tourists.
Our figures show that 1.7 million visitors come to the state every year, and a large number of those would be in the Hunter, and this will rise to about 5 million in about 8 years' time, so we have to be ready for that large explosion.
The military transport plane crashed into a sandy area of the Gulf of Aden coast about 100 kilometres from its destination of Aden Airport. Officials say a sandstorm had reduced visibility to zero at the time of the accident. On board were 36 civilians, 16 Navy personnel and 6 crew. All died instantly. And Mount Pinatubo has come to life again. A 10-kilometre danger zone has been declared around the Filipino volcano. Villagers are on alert for possible evacuation, but volcanologists say the mountain poses no immediate threat to surrounding towns. The eruption of Pinatubo in June last year destroyed many houses and left 700 dead.
The Wollomombi General Store has operated for the past 50 years. In a bid to regain the passing trade she says she's lost with the new bridge development, Rosalind Slade has asked Council to let her relocate and again set up shop. The RTA and Numeric Council have given her the initial go-ahead, but she's still awaiting the green light, watching potential trade slip through her fingers.
We want to be up there now, unfortunately, and such isn't the case.
It's estimated the new shop and attached residence would cost about $400,000. Builders and plans are in readiness for the move, but as yet, Rosalind cannot budge. Meanwhile, the business that has served the Wollomombi district for the past 50 years is suffering an 80% loss of trade.
We could probably go perhaps 2 months would be about tops. Then we'll have to start selling off, I think, at this stage. It just depends on how things go and if the locals patronise us and if the small signs that we've been allowed to put up will encourage some people from the tourist trade to come in off the highway in to visit our store.
With Rosalind less than impressed with her predicament, the locals too are being affected.
They rely on it. It's a community thing. I put up my own little newsletter. Everybody comes in for their mail, and you know, it's a link to the area really, and I think it's an important link.
Satellite academies from Riverina, Wollongong, North Coast, Western, Northwest and the Hunter Valley are locked in sporting combat for the next 4 days, with many seminars also planned as part of the overall development of Australian sport. Today, netball, hockey, cricket and rugby union were on the agenda, while tonight at Harker Oval, Illawarra and Newcastle meet in rugby league. Most academies are fielding 2 teams in each competition, and the netball showed just how far the fine-tuning of our young athletes has progressed. Hunter Green proved a little too good for Illawarra White in one match, but the result was reversed in the other game. Western also showed plenty of brilliance, being superior to North Coast. For many of the hockey players, a first on the artificial surface at the International Hockey Centre Broadmeadow, and Illawarra from a short corner set the tone of their encounter with Western. At the number 2 sports ground late this afternoon, Hunter Region clashed with the Hunter Academy in rugby union, with both teams evenly matched. Tomorrow, basketball, tennis and badminton join the list of sports to be contested.
More than 60 budding champions from the Lower Hunter, aged between 9 and 16, have lined up for the clinic. Among the 5 coaches sharing their knowledge of the game, former Australian representative David Lowe and National League player Mark Jones. During the week, the players practice specific skills, game discipline and match strategy. The clinic is the first held in the Hunter for more than 2 years. According to clinic coordinator Peter Dewhurst, from here on plans are to hold 4 clinics a year. Finding raw talent at the junior level is vital to the future of the sport.
The sport as a sport is on the up at the moment, especially with the Olyroos qualifying for Barcelona and the national team doing very well. Because of that, we've got to look at the grassroots level and we've got to look at the kids and bring the kids through the pipeline.
NBN News.
Information that he's just got on a bus number 315 Tudor Street heading towards the 9 wires.
Dozens of police vehicles responded to the report that a bank robber was making his getaway on a public bus. Startled commuters and bystanders watched as police boarded buses on unscheduled stops, searching for a man matching the description of the offender. The police search extended as one bus after another was intercepted without success. The chase eventually wound down after a second witness reported seeing the man leaving the scene in another vehicle.
We're after a male person, early 20s, 180 centimetres tall, wearing light grey tracksuit pants, light blue sloppy joe. He had short brown crew cut hair.
Police say the man entered the Commonwealth Bank at Hamilton at about 3 o'clock and handed over a note demanding money to a teller. He fled through a rear door with several $1,000s in a plastic bag. At this stage does not believe he was armed. Police inquiries are continuing. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
It's called an air separation unit, a state-of-the-art complex that sucks in air to produce concentrated oxygen and nitrogen.
It's a process where you keep cooling the air, you compress the air and you keep cooling it until it becomes liquid air, and you then effectively distill it in a column.
Once the oxygen is distilled, it's sent 2 kilometres by pipeline to feed the blast furnaces. Without the oxygen, there is no fire, no steel. CIG Engineering developed the plant over 2 years, but the initial outlay of $50 million should save more than $100,000 each year in running costs compared to the BHP's old air separation plant. With union speculation that BHP will wind down its operation over the next decade, CIG's investment is seen as a positive sign for the future. The plant also produces liquid nitrogen for the commercial market. It represents a great saving for CIG in trucking costs, as previously the gas had to be transported from Port Kembla. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The old co-op building at the eastern end of the Armidale Mall has been vacant for the last 6 years. Before that, it was the showroom for the Hardman family dealership. Today, a new owner took control. Within 8 months, Mitre 10 will operate from the building, moving from their current premises in the Kmart complex. The Mitre 10 group has also purchased the rear of the adjoining arcade, where the Hardman family stores its impressive vintage car collection. The cars will be moved and the building demolished to make way for a car park. This will give front and rear access to the store. Former owner Des Hardman would not disclose the selling price. However, he does believe it will help rejuvenate the East End.
I think it certainly needed a boost, and the new mall will help everything go accordingly, I think.
Mr Armstrong, speaking in Narrabri, said recent rain had little or no effect on drought-declared areas. With the Agricultural Council of Australia and New Zealand now meeting in Mackay, Mr Armstrong is calling for the Council to address the drought problem and come up with some answers.
Our government is doing more than any other government in Australia today, state or federal, in assisting its farmers through rural assistance and through drought relief. It's a very proud record that we have, but we'd rather not have to do it. We'd rather see prosperity, of course.
He sees farmers on the land still rich in assets, but struggling cash-wise to make ends meet. Equally concerned with the state of the West, member for Gwydir John Anderson is also calling for a decent drought strategy, believing farmers' morale is at an all-time low.
I think we're going to lose generations of valuable experience, of accumulated know-how that Australia just cannot do without in those western areas. It's not good enough to say that drought occurs from time to time in Australia. We all know it does. But when you get devastation of the sort that you've got out west, coming on years of, on top of years of difficult seasonal conditions anyway, and collapsed commodity prices, you've got a natural disaster and a national disaster.
While the campaigning continues for the federal government to change its drought policy, farmers in the West are also hoping for a change in the weather.
Police launched an extensive search of streets around the Commonwealth Bank at Beaumont Street, Hamilton, after a robbery there on Tuesday afternoon. Staff told police the man had passed a note to a teller demanding money. It's thought he fled in a light blue Holden utility with several $1,000s. Now police believe the man may have been one of 3 escapees from St Heliers prison in the Upper Hunter on Monday. 3 men serving time for armed robbery and break-enter offences escaped. Prison authorities found a hole in the perimeter fence of the compound at about 8 p.m. They also found tin cutters next to the hole. The 3 who escaped are in their mid to late 20s, but none are considered dangerous. The man sought for the bank robbery is described as in his mid-20s, about 180 to 185 centimetres tall, of medium build with a dark brown crew cut. At the time, he was wearing a light blue sloppy Joe and jeans.
Stephen Spoljaric gave the host high school a dream start with a super shot. Oxley were playing control football, however, and didn't panic. Just before full-time equalising, Troy Adams shot parried by Adam Wallace, but Scott Johnson was on the spot to knock it away. Extra time and it was all Oxley and Troy Adams. He put them in the lead after Chris Jolliffe laid on a superb ball and Adams did the rest. Adams put the issue beyond doubt and Oxley into the quarter-finals when he sensationally trapped the ball in the area and gave Wallace no chance. At Maitland today, the final of the Flores Conway Tennis Cup knockout, with each of the 10 educational regions of New South Wales represented by 1 team of 4 girls. 4 singles and 4 doubles were played in each match, with Gorican High on the Central Coast just scraping home in the final against East Hills Tech High of Sydney. 4 rubbers 37 games to 4 rubbers 32 games. In the consolation final, it was a win for Ballina High, who thrashed Bomaderry High 7 rubbers 42 to 1 rubber 22. It was the 32nd time that the Classic had been raced, and it has long been recognised as the toughest one-day cycle race in Australia. 200 riders set out from Grafton, with the B and C grade cyclists getting a head start on handicap, and they were to hold that advantage over the A graders all day. Tactics played a big part in the event as well as the conditions, and in the lower grades it was a win for former Olympian Jeff Scaines of Moree, and in the C grade it was a win for B Craft. Just over 7 hours after leaving Grafton, the A-graders flew into Inverell, with Victorian Institute of Sport rider Billy Joe Shearsby holding the pack at bay to record a fine win.
Dance, music and costuming form the centrepiece of this year's festival, with Worn to the Edge the theme to the Arts in Action celebration. Held every 2 years, this extravaganza was developed around the idea of wearable art. Artistic director Judith Ball has brought together nationally famous artists such as Peter Tully, Greer Taylor and Patricia Black, with choreographers from Sydney also called in to add those finishing touches. Raw materials such as wool, silk and leather are featured in the garments on display, offering something for everyone.
We cater for not only the arts people and the dance people, but also anybody that's interested in clothing and colour and wearable, and also sporting groups.
The Fashion and Dance Spectacular is only one part of the Arts in Action Festival. That will begin in Tamworth on October the 16th. Local artists, students and members of the community are involved in other activities such as art and craft, music concerts and art displays. The National Church Life Survey took in 6,500 parishioners from 19 denominations Australia-wide. In the Hunter region, the survey found significant growth in the Anglican Church, with half of the 68 parishes in the area growing in size. At Christchurch Cathedral alone, the congregation has grown by 50%. It now has more than 300 families attending regularly.
We're looking at a huge increase in families. I think families are trying to find ways to find meaning and purpose in their lives and getting it back together. And I think that's reflected. The church does provide those needs for families.
In the Taree area, there are around 190 premises that come under the Food Regulations Act. The council sees its job not as a policing role, but one of education, awareness and communication. Shop owners and food handlers have been attending seminars to learn about their responsibilities.
A lot of shop proprietors, people from restaurants, takeaway food bars, from clubs. We have some people from the hospitals and also from some of the motels as well.
About 140 people attended the 3 sessions. They heard from well-known food technologist Barry Dean and were told of impending changes to the Food Regulations Act. According to council spokesman Wayne Deere, it's important food handlers know correct hygiene and how to protect the public from food contamination. The council inspects food shops at least once a year.